Hey, Wide Awake family. If you see this, it's your sign to smash that like button. Yes, you listening right now. That way YouTube shows you more amazing stories like this one. We love you all. Now enjoy the stories.
First dates are supposed to be low pressure. That's why I picked mini golf. You don't want to talk the whole time, you can laugh at each other being terrible at aiming, and it feels safer than sitting across a table trying not to spill water on yourself. Her name was Amber. She looked way better in person than her pictures. Confident, relaxed, funny too. She walked up to me holding her putter like a sword and joked she was going to crush me before we even started. I liked that she wasn't shy. We grabbed a scorecard and picked bright neon balls. The place was kind of packed since it was Friday night. Families, teenagers, random couples, all crowding the fake grass and glowing obstacles. At first, everything was perfect. She leaned close when tallying the score and pretended to rage when she missed easy shots. I could feel myself feeling more comfortable, like, yeah, maybe this could go somewhere. Then she changed. Right around the seventh hole, she got quiet. Her eyes kept flicking around like she was searching for something, or someone. I asked if she was all right, and she smiled too big and said she was fine. That kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. We reached the next hole where this family had a stroller near the edge of the course. The parents were distracted taking pictures of their little kid trying to hit the ball. Without warning, Amber crouched near the stroller like she dropped something. I thought maybe her phone slipped out, but then I saw her hand slide inside the diaper bag so fast it barely looked real. When she stood up, her sleeve was covering something she stuffed into her pocket. My brain shut down for a second. I tried to convince myself I didn't see what I just saw. Maybe she was picking up a toy that fell out. Maybe the family wouldn't even notice. Maybe everything was normal and my eyes were just glitching. We kept walking. She was suddenly cheerful again. Too cheerful. She even did this dumb victory dance when she got a hole in one. But every few seconds she tapped her pocket, like checking to make sure whatever she stole was still there. I couldn't stop staring at that pocket. My stomach was tight, and I couldn't focus anymore. When we reached the last hole near the ticket booth, I finally built up the courage to ask what she took. She smirked, like she had been waiting for that moment. She whispered it was nothing serious, that she'd explain later, and told me not to freak out. Easy for her to say. We turned in the clubs. The worker behind the counter looked tired, and didn't say anything except handing out the free lollipops they get when you finish the course. I tried to act normal, but my hands were sweaty. I just wanted to go home. I didn't sign up for this. Right when I thought we were in the clear, two security guards came out from a side door. They were walking fast, eyes locked on us. One of them pointed and said they needed us to come with them. People looked up from their games. A few gasped like we were criminals. Amber's face dropped. All the fake confidence melted off her. They led us to this small office near the arcade games. The walls had monitors showing every camera angle around the mini-golf area. One guard told us to sit. The other played back footage, high-quality Zoom video of Amber sticking her hand into that family's bag and slitting out a wallet. Not a misunderstanding, not a mistake, not something I imagined. Clear as daylight, she stole it. I tried to tell them I wasn't involved, that I had no clue what she was doing. They didn't care. They said I was right beside her, that I even helped distract the family by talking to them earlier, that it looked like we planned it together. My heart was slamming so hard it hurt. I was shaking, trying to explain that I met her online today and didn't know anything about her. They said everyone says that. They asked if I had ever done this before. They asked if she had more wallets. They told me theft at family venues is serious and police were already alerted. Amber finally spoke. She swore she'd give it back. She said she didn't mean to cause trouble. She kept repeating she only took it because she thought she recognized the bag. The guards didn't buy one word of it. The family from the course walked into the office behind the guards. The mom grabbed the wallet off the desk with this angry look like she wished she could punch both of us. The dad stared at me like he was memorizing my face. They took the kid and left with a security escort. After they left, the guard stepped out to speak with the police on the phone. The other stood blocking the exit so we couldn't go anywhere. It felt like hours. My mouth was so dry I couldn't swallow. Amber leaned toward me and whispered, "Don't freak out. It'll pass." Like this was just another round of mini golf. She smiled again, this cold smile, and said she'd done this before, that she always gets away with it, that they only care about the stolen item, and since the wallet was returned, it wouldn't be a big deal. She actually tried to convince me to calm down and maybe even laugh with her about it later. Her eyes were totally wrong now. Too calm, too used to getting caught. Police eventually arrived and separated us. They questioned me again outside next to their car. After checking my ID and confirming through text that I didn't know her long, they believed me just enough to let me go, but told me not to leave the area until they finished processing her. I waited outside the gate, watching the scene like I was in a nightmare. Amber looked straight at me while they handcuffed her. That same smile. Like I was part of the thrill. Like she expected me to join her again someday. I drove home feeling like something dark brushed past my life and almost dragged me with it. Every time my phone buzzes now, I'm scared it's her, somehow already out, asking if I want to play another round. The whole point of choosing a motorbike guy on a dating app is because it looks cool, right? Wind in your hair, city lights flying past, looking like you're in some action movie. That was the exact vibe I pictured when this guy named Kai asked if I wanted to go for a ride on his bike for our first date. He said we'd grab milkshakes somewhere with a nice view. It sounded simple and fun. I'd never been on a bike before, so I said sure. He replied instantly with a smiley face and said I'd love it. When I met him outside this burger place near the high street, he looked way too relaxed. Leather jacket, helmet in one hand, leaning against a black motorbike that honestly looked sick. A bit scratched up in places, but still sick. He handed me a spare helmet and said I didn't need to worry. He was a careful driver. His voice had that smooth confidence that makes you trust someone too easily. Before we got on, he kept glancing up and down the road like he was waiting for something, or checking for someone. I asked if everything was good. He nodded quickly and said yeah, just excited. We hopped on, and the moment we drove off, everything felt unreal. The roar of the engine, the cold air slapping my jacket, the way the city became a blur of headlights, it made my stomach flip in the best way. I held onto his jacket tight, laughing into the wind. I didn't even care where we were going. He didn't drive like a crazy person. It was smooth, controlled. It almost felt too smooth, like he knew exactly where to go without stopping or thinking. No red lights caught us. No turns seemed random, like he was following a path he memorized ages ago. About 10 minutes later, we reached a lookout spot by a cliff where you could see the whole coastline stretched out under the moonlight. Empty car park except for an old truck on the far side. Kai parked near the railing and shut off the engine. He didn't take off his helmet right away. He sat there breathing hard, like he'd just run a marathon instead of driving a bike. I hopped off and stretched my legs, smiling like a little kid. I told him the ride was actually amazing. He said he was glad and pulled off his helmet slowly, scanning the quiet road behind us. I noticed his knuckles were scraped up. Not a tiny cut, like he'd hit something hard. Dry blood around the edges. When I asked about it, he shoved his hands into his jacket pockets and said he fell the other day. The way he said it too fast made my stomach twist a little. Before I could think more about it, the silence was broken by the faint sound of sirens somewhere behind us. I turned around. Kai stiffened. He whispered for me to put my helmet back on. I asked why. He didn't answer. Just stared ahead like something was heading straight for us. A second later, flashing lights cut through the darkness. A police car zoomed up the hill, followed by another. My heart dropped. I couldn't even move. The bikes, the sirens, the night. It all felt like a trap snapping shut right where I stood. The car skidded into the parking lot, boxing us in. Officers jumped out yelling at us not to move. They shouted orders rapid fire. Hands up, step away from the bike, helmets off, face forward. It felt like every movie scene where someone gets arrested. Except now it was my date and me standing frozen like idiots. Kai raised his hands slowly. I did the same. The officers swarmed him first, pushing him to the ground and cuffing him. One of them pinned his shoulder with a knee while another yelled something into a radio. I kept saying this must be a mistake, that it was just a date, but one officer turned to me and asked how long I'd known him. I said we'd only met that night. He asked me if I saw what he'd done. I said he didn't know what he was talking about. That's when they told me. Someone on a motorbike sped through town minutes earlier. A hit and run. A pedestrian got struck crossing the road. Witnesses saw a black bike. This bike, speeding away. They said the rider didn't stop. The officers said they'd been chasing it ever since. Kai twisted his neck to look at me, his face pale under the streetlight. He whispered that he didn't mean to. He kept saying he panicked. Then he begged me, literally begged, to tell them I was with him the whole time, that we'd been parked there for a while, that the bike was mine. He said if I didn't help, we'd both feel blamed. My legs almost gave up. He was asking me to lie about a crime I had zero clue about. My voice cracked, saying I couldn't. He stared at me like I'd betrayed him personally. He shouted that I didn't understand, that I had to help him, that they would ruin his life. An officer told him to shut up and shoved him fully to the ground. They questioned me separately. Where did he pick me up? How well did I know him? Did he seem nervous before the ride? Did he take any weird turns or speed up randomly? I answered everything honestly, shaking so badly the officer had to tell me to breathe. They brought over this flashlight thing that checked the bike quickly. It beeped instantly when pointed at the bumper. Another officer said something like, "That's impact residue," and my stomach turned into a knot so tight it hurt. They found a dent on the side of the bike too. Not big, but obvious once you knew what happened. Kai wasn't looking at anyone anymore. He stared at the pavement like he already saw the rest of the night happening before it did. They put him in the police car, slammed the door, drove him away. I just stood there under the freezing sky, the ocean waves crashing like background noise to a life falling apart next to me. One of the officers gave me his card and said I might be needed to clarify things soon. He apologized for dragging me into it, but said I was lucky to be alive. Lucky I didn't get into that bike 5 minutes earlier than I did. Lucky that I wasn't the one who hit someone. I walked home shaking, clutching that card like proof the night wasn't just a nightmare. My first ever ride on a motorbike felt less like a cool date and more like I got dragged into someone else's worst decision. Now every time I see a bike speed past, I flinch. I imagine sirens and police blocking the road. I imagine someone begging me to lie for them again. I imagine how easily I could die sitting behind him. One wrong minute, and that could have been my life smashed into the street instead of some strangers. The beach always felt like the chillest place for a first date. Fresh air, waves, people around, and it doesn't cost anything. So when I matched with this girl named Maddie and she said she loved the ocean, I figured, hey, perfect. We grabbed drinks from a food truck and walked toward the quieter end of the beach, where the sand gets deep and the lights from the pier don't reach. She was cool at first. A little awkward, but who isn't when they first meet someone off an app? She wore a big hoodie, even though it wasn't cold. She kept gripping a tiny spade, like a kid's sand toy, which I thought was kind of funny. I joked she must be planning on building the greatest sandcastle ever. She smiled but didn't laugh. We sat down and talked for a bit while listening to the waves crash. It was peaceful. Her voice was soft. She told me about random things like how she used to live near a lake and how she would always dig in the dirt looking for surprises. I didn't fully get what she meant by surprises, but I thought she was just being quirky. She kept glancing to the side, though, toward a spot halfway up the beach, near the tall grass where the sand looked oddly piled up. Like someone had dug there recently. I didn't pay attention at first, but she couldn't stop staring. Then she just stood up out of nowhere and walked straight toward it. She didn't say anything, didn't ask me to follow. But I did because what else was I supposed to do? First date rule. Don't let someone wander off into the dark alone unless you want to look like a jerk. She knelt down at the pile of disturbed sand and started digging. Not casual digging. Not like, hey, let's find shells digging. Like it mattered. Like something important was right under there. Her breathing got heavier. She pushed the sand away with her hands even though she had the spade. The sand flew everywhere. I told her I didn't think we should mess with someone else's thing, but she didn't react. She just kept going faster, like she was racing a timer only she knew about. I stood there awkwardly, sipping my drink, glancing around hoping no one was watching. But someone was. A flashlight beam hit us. A beach patrol officer walked over, asking if everything was all right. Maddie didn't stop digging. She didn't even look up. The officer asked again, this time sounding more serious. I stepped in and said everything was fine, just messing around. The officer walked closer and shined the light directly on the disturbed sand. His face changed immediately. He stepped back and pressed a button on his radio. He didn't even try to hide the worry in his voice. He said they needed backup right now for a buried body update. I froze. My brain couldn't even make sense of the words. A body here, right where we were. More officers rushed over so fast I barely had time to blink. They surrounded us and told us to stand up slowly. Maddie finally stopped digging. She just sat there staring into the sand like she was upset she ran out of time. The officers separated us. They told me to put my hands where they could see them. I kept saying we didn't do anything. They told me to stay quiet. They guided us away from the hole and blocked it off with flashlights and their bodies. I could hear them calling for detectives, calling for crime scene technicians, calling for backup. More cars rolled onto the beach, lights everywhere, people walking closer trying to see what was going on. A whole date nightmare turned into a full police incident. Maddie didn't talk. She didn't look scared. She looked disappointed, but the surprise she was trying to dig up wasn't what she expected anymore. An officer questioned me. How did I know her? How long? Did she mention anything before coming here? Did she tell me why this exact spot? I told them we met today, we were just hanging out. She decided to dig and I followed her because I didn't want her to get hurt. They asked if I buried anything earlier. I almost laughed because it sounded so insane, but I could tell they were dead serious, so I shook my head and kept saying no. They searched the area with shovels and equipment. The officers kept glancing at us like they expected a body to rise up any second. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. Then someone yelled. They found something. Everyone turned. I think my soul left my body at that moment. But it wasn't a person. It was a bag, old, black, and soaked from the sand. Inside were random items, kids' toys, some shells, a crushed soda can, and a soggy notebook. Everything looked like it'd been buried forever. Someone probably tossed junk in there years ago. No crime, no missing person, just trash. The officers stared at the bag for way too long before finally deciding it wasn't anything dangerous. The tension snapped and everyone started talking at once. They checked the rest of the spot just to be sure. Nothing else there. One officer came back to us and asked Maddie why she was digging. I braced myself for the dumbest reason in the world. She said she thought she left something there when she was younger. That was it. That was her explanation. No apology. No embarrassment. Just a blank look, like we had interrupted her mid-project. The officers weren't sure if she was messing with them or genuinely confused. They warned her she couldn't dig in public areas like that without permission. They told me I was free to go, but they'd be taking her in for further questioning. She didn't resist. She just walked with them silently toward the cars. Before she got in, she turned her head just enough to look at me. She said, "It wasn't supposed to be trash." Then she got in the police car and they shut the door. I stood there watching the lights disappear down the road. I felt like my heart was still on the beach somewhere buried under that sand. I got home and checked my phone messages. Her profile was gone, like she deleted it right after they took her. The chat vanished too. No messages, no pictures, nothing proving the date ever existed. Sometimes I wonder if she really thought something else was buried there. Something bad. Something she needed to destroy or find before anyone else did. Something she wasn't allowed to tell me about. Or maybe she was checking if I'd help her dig up something worse next time. I don't go to the beach anymore. Not at night. Not with strangers. Maybe not ever again. Waiting in someone's car on a first date is already awkward. Like you're in their space before you even know if you like them. But I was trying to be chill about it. His name was Brandon. We matched 2 days ago, and he offered to pick me up so we could grab some ice cream and walk around the pier. I wasn't totally comfortable with the idea of getting in a stranger's car, so I told him I'd meet him at the pier parking lot instead. He said that was cool. He texted saying he was stuck in the line for the toilet inside the arcade and asked me to wait in his car because he didn't want me standing around bored. He told me the car was a black sedan with tinted windows parked near the entrance. I saw the car. I saw the lights blink when he clicked something on his keys from inside the building, and he waved through the glass door. So I figured that confirmed it was definitely his. I slid into the passenger seat. It was cleaner than I expected. Just a phone charger, a pair of sunglasses, and a jacket in the back. The keys weren't in the ignition, though. The car was silent, kind of creepy silent. I texted him that I was inside, and he said he'd be out in a sec. I scrolled through my phone, trying not to look suspicious sitting alone in a random car. A couple of people walked by and glanced in like I was being weird. I kept thinking, please come out, this is embarrassing. Finally, Brandon walked out of the arcade, wiping his hands on his jeans like he washed them. He smiled when he saw me and gave a thumbs up. I smiled back. Everything felt normal again. Until the sound of tires screeching exploded behind us. I flinched so hard my phone nearly flew out of my hand. 2 police cars slid diagonally in front of us, boxing in the setting like we were in some crime show. Lights flashing straight into the windshield. Sirens short and sharp, like they didn't even want to waste time. Officers jumped out with their hands on their weapons. They shouted for both of us to keep our hands visible and step out of the car slowly. My heart hit full panic mode instantly. I wasn't even sure what to do with my hands. I just held them up, shaking. Brandon stopped dead in his tracks outside the car. His face went pale so fast it was like all the blood left his body. One cop yelled again, louder this time, to get out of the vehicle. I froze. I didn't even close the door when I got in, so I pushed it open and stepped out with my hands up like they said. The cops pointed at Brandon next. They told him to get on the ground. He looked at me, eyes wide, and whispered, "Please just do what they say." He looked way more scared than me. The officers rushed him, cuffing him in seconds. He didn't fight. He just stared at the ground, breathing fast. They told me not to move while they checked the car. One of them popped open the driver door and checked the wheel column, mumbling something about wires. Another officer looked at me and asked if the car belonged to me. I squealed, my voice cracked like I forgot how to talk. I said no. Definitely no. I told him I barely knew the guy. First date. Wasn't my car. Then Brandon snapped his head up like he couldn't believe I said that. He begged me to say it was my car. Repeated it over and over like his life depended on it. His voice cracked in this desperate way that made the officers stare harder. He said if I didn't say it was mine, we'd both be arrested. He said they'd think we stole it together. He said I had to help or I'd regret it. He tried to step toward me, but the officers held him back. The cop closest to me whispered that the car was reported stolen earlier that day. I felt everything inside me drop straight through the ground. Brandon begged louder, telling me to lie, telling me to please say it was mine. He said I was the one sitting in it, not him. That they'd believe me if I said it belonged to me. The officers separated us fast after that. One dragged him further away while he kept shouting my name like I betrayed him. The other stood between me and the car asking more questions. How long I knew him. How I got in, why I said yes to sitting there alone. I told him everything. That he flashed the lights. That he waved from inside. That I assumed it was his. That I just arrived. I wasn't even in the car for 5 minutes. They checked his pockets. No key. Just a tool you could use to unlock cars if you really knew what you were doing. And a folded piece of paper with a list of makes and models scribbled across it. Including this one. I could hear Brandon arguing with the officers, telling them this was all a misunderstanding. Saying he borrowed it. Saying he was going to return it. Saying anything his brain could think of. They put him in the police car while he yelled that I set him up. That I ruined everything. That I ruined his life. That I tricked him. The cop near me asked if I needed an ambulance. I said no, just needed water. And maybe a different universe to live in. They questioned me for a while longer before letting me go, but they took my details in case they needed more later. They said the guy had a record. Small stuff before. Nothing too insane, but enough to know he wasn't new at this. I sat back on the curb shaking. Hugging myself like that could make me feel normal again. Brandon stared at me through the window of the police car the entire time. Not blinking. Not talking. Just staring like I ruined some huge plan. When they finally drove him away, I felt like I could breathe again. But the sound of his voice begging me to lie still echoes in my head sometimes. I delete every dating app now as soon as I reinstall it. I check license plates in parking lots like a detective. I never get in a car unless I see someone actually lock or unlock it right in front of me. Because the craziest part of the night wasn't the cops or the sirens or the fear of getting arrested. It was how quickly someone could make me part of their crime, without me even knowing it. I always thought rooftop dates looked sick in movies. City lights behind you, fresh air, no loud music drowning out the conversation. So when this girl named Leah suggested we meet on top of this fancy skyscraper bar, I said yes straight away. It sounded way cooler than sitting in some boring cafe trying to think of what to say next. I got there first. Security stood at the front checking people because apparently it was a private event night. They scanned my ID, gave me a wristband, and waved me through. The elevator ride up felt like forever. I kept staring at the numbers climbing higher and higher like the building was trying to reach space. When I stepped out, the view punched me in the face. The whole city looked tiny from up there, like I could just step over the edge and float above everything. Warm lights from heaters glowed around the tables. Drinks sparkled with ice and neon colors. Music was chill and low. It actually looked like a perfect date setting. I texted Leah that I made it. She replied she was at the entrance just finishing a bag check. For some reason, that made my stomach twist a little. I didn't even know she was bringing a bag. When she came up, she smiled like she owned the place. She had this sleek black backpack and walked with confidence like she didn't care who stared. She hugged me quickly and said I looked better in person. That made me grin like an idiot. We walked around the rooftop looking for seats. She pointed out a spot near the edge where we could see the entire skyline. I told her she had good taste. She laughed and said she already knew I'd say that. Then security walked over. Two guys in black suits with radios clipped to their collars. They asked to check Leah's bag again. She didn't argue. She just handed it over casually like she expected this. One guard unzipped the bag. His face changed instantly. Not confused. Not curious. Straight alert. He pulled out a set of metal lock-picking tools. Then a thick roll of duct tape. Then a pair of gloves. Everything looked way too organized. The guard asked her why she had these. Not loud, but everyone around us could suddenly hear it. Leah didn't panic. She didn't even blink. She just stared at the guard with this blank calm like she'd planned this moment too. She said, in the most casual voice ever, "Instructions change." That was it. Then she ran. Fast. I didn't even see her grab the bag. She just took off toward the other side of the rooftop like she knew exactly where the exits were. The guards shouted and chased her, but she dodged them so easily it felt unreal. Like she had done this 100 times before. I stood there frozen like the dumbest human alive. People were screaming. Drinks spilled everywhere. The music cut out so fast it left a ringing in my ears. More guards came from inside the building. Radios buzzed nonstop. One grabbed me by the arm and demanded to know if I was with her. I said no. I yelled that I literally just met her and I didn't know anything about those things in her bag. He asked how long we've been planning this. Planning what? I didn't even know what this was. He dragged me toward the door while the other guards chased Leah. The crazy thing. She made it to the stairwell door before anyone caught up. She yanked it open and slipped inside for a second. I thought she got away. But another guard was already at the bottom of the stairs. They shouted to lock down the building. People kept yelling. Someone knocked over a heater and flames shot up for a second before sprinklers kicked in. The whole scene turned into chaos. They hauled me into a back office to separate me from everyone else. I could barely breathe. An older security manager came in and asked if Leah was my girlfriend. I almost laughed because the date hadn't even properly started yet. I told him we met online. He gave me this look like he didn't believe a word I said. He asked if I knew what she was planning to do with the tools. I said I didn't even know she brought a bag. He asked if she had threatened me or convinced me into helping. I told him she barely said anything weird except she always seemed like she knew what I'd say before I said it. He wrote everything down while staring at me like I was hiding something. He said the police were already on their way and I'd need to explain everything again. My hands were shaking so hard I had to sit on them. When the police arrived, they started reviewing camera footage right in front of me. They slowed down every second of her running. She never looked confused, never panicked. She kept glancing at the cameras like she knew exactly where they were. Then she disappeared. 1 second, she was sprinting down the stairs. The next second, she wasn't on any camera angle. Not slipping out of view. Not ducking behind anything. Just gone like the wind swallowed her. Police searched every floor. They locked down the exits, but no one saw her leave. They asked me again how long I'd known her. I showed them the dating app chat, but the messages were gone. The app said, "Conversation not found." Her profile wasn't there anymore. No photos, no saved name, no record. Like she never existed. The cops told me to go home, but warned that she might contact me again. They said if she does, I should call instantly. I just nodded like a robot because my brain had stopped working about 40 minutes earlier. When I finally reached my house, I sat in my car for a long time staring at the door. I kept thinking about that bag. Those tools. That weird sentence she said. Instructions changed. Changed from what? Me? Someone else. The rooftop. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. One message. Thanks for being exactly where you were supposed to be. I dropped the phone so fast it hit the floor. I didn't reply. I blocked the number. But blocking someone you can't find is useless. Blocking someone who knows exactly where you are isn't protection. I don't go near rooftops anymore. I don't go on dates that involve elevators. And I definitely don't answer texts from numbers I don't know. Because somewhere out there, she's still following instructions. A lot of my friends always joke that online dating is just gambling with strangers, and honestly, I get it. You're sitting across from some person you've never met in your life, hoping they're not weird or dangerous. So when I matched with this guy named Luca, I wasn't expecting fireworks. His profile was normal. Goof-eye selfies, a dog, some pictures at a museum. He texted like a real human, not a bot, and he didn't ask anything creepy. We picked a daytime date at this outdoor street market because that felt safe. People everywhere. Bright daylight. No sketchy vibes. When I got there, he waved before I even said his name and gave me this big warm smile like he was genuinely excited to see me. The kind of smile that makes you think you made a good decision. We started walking around, checking out the little stalls with random handmade stuff and street food. He was funny. He made jokes that weren't forced. He kept suggesting food for us to try and insisted on paying in cash every time. I wasn't mad about that. But the weird stuff started small. We were looking at some candles and I told him I loved the one that smelled like vanilla. He nodded and said, "Yeah, you always buy vanilla-scented ones." I froze because I never told him that. It wasn't even on my profile or anything. I let it slide, thinking maybe he guessed lucky. Then we stopped at this jewelry stall, and he pointed to a necklace and said that looks like something your sister would wear. I never mentioned having a sister. I asked how he knew that, and he laughed like it was obvious and said you talked about her earlier. I knew I didn't. My stomach started to twist, but I tried to act normal. I figured maybe he saw something on one of my socials without me remembering. People stalk a bit, whatever. But then he started listing other things. He asked how my dog was handling the fireworks last weekend. He asked if my mom still worked late shifts. He asked if my brother ever got his phone back after losing it. He said all of it like we'd known each other forever, like these were normal topics we talked about all the time. I hadn't told him any of it. I kept saying, "Wait, how do you know that?" And he kept laughing it off like I was messing with him. But I wasn't laughing at all anymore. He changed the subject and suggested we head toward the back area where it was quieter. That made my whole body tense. I said I wanted to stay near the crowd where the music was loud and kids were running around. He said sure, but the look in his eyes said he was disappointed. The market was full of people, and suddenly I felt like every single one of them was too far away. Like if something happened, no one would notice. Then a man bumped into Luca kind of hard on purpose. He said sorry to me, but not to him. He walked past, but I noticed him glancing back. He didn't look like a random shopper. His eyes were sharp, watching. A few minutes later, I noticed the same man standing near a stand selling churros. He kept pretending to browse, but his eyes were on us. Then another man across the street. Same vibe. It started getting closer without making it obvious. Luca didn't notice, or maybe he did. He looked calmer than ever, like he was right where he wanted to be. He started telling me how proud he was of me for showing up today. Like I needed courage just to be there. I pulled out my phone pretending I had to show him something, but really I was checking if I could call someone. Before I could tap anything, a third man stepped out of the crowd right in front of me and flashed a badge so fast I barely processed it. Police. Undercover. He spoke quietly and told me not to panic. He asked me to step away from Luca slowly. I almost couldn't move because my legs felt like they turned into concrete, but I shuffled back. Luca looked confused at first, then annoyed, then cold. The officer told me Luca wasn't his real name. He said they'd been tracking him because he'd been following multiple women for months. He'd learned everything he could about them, then pretend it was coincidence. He'd show up at their jobs, the gym, places they never told him about. Then he'd charm them into meeting up alone. They'd been watching him approach me since I arrived. Luca didn't run at first. He stood there with that same soft smile he gave me at the beginning, but now it felt wrong. Too practiced. Too dead inside. He said I shouldn't believe everything strangers say. The officer stepped closer and reached for his arm. That's when Luca snapped. He shoved the officer and sprinted into the crowd. Another officer grabbed at him, but he slipped past. The undercover cops started yelling into radios. A wave of panic spread through the market as people moved back. I just stood there frozen, watching a guy who knew my favorite scent and my family's personal life disappear between booths like he belonged in every shadow. The officer came back to me and asked if I was hurt. I couldn't talk yet. I just shook my head. He asked if Luca ever came to my house, if he ever left anything behind, if he ever told me where he lived. I said no to every question, but I wasn't even sure anymore. They told me he'd probably been keeping tabs on me long before we matched, that he must pick me out randomly weeks ago. They warned me to lock everything: doors, social media, phone privacy. They gave me a card to call if I saw him again. Then they asked if I needed someone to walk me to my car. I said yes because I didn't trust my legs not to collapse. When I sat in the driver's seat, I finally checked my phone. I scrolled back to our chat. It was completely blank. The messages were gone. His pictures were gone. His profile picture was gone. His account no longer existed. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the phone. I keep checking behind me when I walk anywhere now. I keep the curtains closed even during the day. I double-check the locks before going to bed. He got away. He knows where I shop, where I walk, who my family is. And he told me something near the beginning of the date that I didn't think about until now. He said he liked me because I was predictable. I always thought the safest part of a first date was the moment you sit down and order food. Like once the drinks are on the table, you can finally breathe and pretend everything is normal even if it's a little awkward. So when I matched with a girl named Nora and she picked this nice Italian place downtown and I felt like this one might actually go right. She seemed sweet over text, polite, a little shy. Not too many selfies, just pictures of sunsets and her cat. Nothing weird at all. She arrived a few minutes after me, wearing a denim jacket and a simple black dress. She looked like someone who didn't try too hard because she didn't need to. She apologized for being late and sat down quickly, glancing around the room like she was checking who else was there. I didn't think much of it. Everyone gets nervous. The restaurant had TVs placed high up in the corners, but they were playing some boring news station with subtitles. I didn't pay attention to them at all. We were too busy trying not to sound like idiots while asking each other the usual first date questions. She told me she loved animals. She wanted to travel. She used to play volleyball. I told her I was learning to cook and that I sucked at volleyball, but could at least run without falling. She laughed, and for the first time, her shoulders relaxed a bit. She really had a nice laugh. She ordered spaghetti and meatballs. I got lasagna. The waiter smiled a lot at us like he was rooting for the date. It made me feel even more comfortable than I expected. Nora thanked him every time he brought something over. She had this kind way of talking, soft but clear. Only thing that felt a little strange was how she kept looking at the door. Not like she was waiting for someone else, more like she was scared someone might walk in. Her fork paused midair sometimes. Her eyes would jump to the entrance, then back to me. I asked if she saw someone she knew. She just said she thought she did earlier, but it must have been a mistake. We kept eating. The food was actually amazing. The place smelled like fresh bread and melted cheese and garlic. I joked that we should come here every Friday, and she smiled like she actually pictured that. Then the TVs above us switched from news to a breaking story alert. The sound stayed off, but all the diners looked up because the graphics were bright red and bold. The waiter paused near our table, holding his tray mid-air. A news reporter appeared on screen, speaking seriously. Next to her face, a missing person photo popped up. It was Nora. Same denim jacket, same exact smile. My first thought was that I was losing my mind, that it was just someone who looked like her. But right when I tried to pretend it was coincidence, the screen showed a full name, and it was hers. Same spelling she had told me earlier. Then the footage cut to her family talking to police outside what looked like their house. They were crying. saying she went missing 2 days ago after leaving a friend's house. The waiter dropped his tray. A loud clatter of dishes hit the floor. Everyone looked at our table. Norda's face went ghost white. She grabbed the napkin like she wanted to hide behind it. I stared at her, but she wouldn't look at me anymore. She just stared at the table, wide-eyed, breathing too fast. The reporter kept talking. Something about authorities asking the public to stay alert, that they believed she might not be alone. The camera showed screenshots from CCTV. One of them showed her walking somewhere late at night with a guy whose face was blurred. The reporter said police suspected she'd been taken, or worse. Waiters froze. People whispered. Someone pulled out their phone to call. Another person already had police on the line. Nora finally looked up. Her eyes were filled with panic. She whispered that she had to leave. I sat there dumb, not able to react fast enough. She stood up and told me to stay at the table and act normal. Her voice trembled like she was about to break apart. She rushed for the restroom, avoiding everyone's gaze. I wanted to follow her, but I was afraid of making everything worse. 2 staff members went to block the exit. Others whispered to each other like they had been trained for something like this. It felt unreal watching them take positions around the restaurant like she was some kind of threat. A moment later, the front doors burst open. Police officers flooded inside, calling out her name. The whole place went silent except for chairs scraping as people moved back from our table. I told them I didn't know what was happening, that it was our first date, that I wasn't helping her hide or anything. They told me to sit still and not move. Officers checked the restroom. Empty. They checked the kitchen. Nothing. They checked the back exit. Staff insisted it had been watched. She was gone. 1 minute she was in front of me panicking, and the next she vanished like smoke. The officers asked how long I'd known her. I said a week. They said they'd heard that before tonight. They checked my phone messages and saw that she barely told me anything about her life. They asked if she mentioned being in trouble, if she hinted at running from someone. I said she only seemed nervous in public, especially around the entrance. Somebody replayed the restaurant's CCTV. It showed her slipping into a service hallway while everyone was watching the TVs. Not running, not tripping. Calm, smart, almost practiced. Then she looked up at the camera just before the feed cut. Her expression didn't match anything I'd seen earlier. Not scared, not shy. Calculated. They let me go after a few hours, but they know where I live now. They call sometimes asking if she contacted me again. She hasn't. Her profile disappeared from the app. My chat with her glitched and then erased itself like she never messaged me in the first place. But the weirdest part, sometimes the news gives tiny updates. They still haven't found her. Each report suggests a different story. Some say she's a victim running from a kidnapper. Others say she might have been involved with something criminal before disappearing. They don't know if she's dangerous or in danger. And I can't stop thinking. What if she didn't want to be found? What if the guy in the blurred footage wasn't the one who took her, but the one she escaped from? I replayed a dinner in my head every night. Her half smile, her fear of the entrance, the way she scanned everyone, the way she vanished right before the police saw her. I wonder if she chose me because I looked like someone who would believe a stranger easily, someone who wouldn't question anything, someone she could use as cover until she slipped away again. Sometimes my phone buzzes late at night, and I'm terrified that it might be her, or terrified that it isn't. I always thought carnivals were the safest kind of date. Bright lights, loud games, tons of people, zero chance of anything creepy happening because who's dumb enough to try something weird in a place with families everywhere? So when I matched with a guy named Jay, and he suggested going to the fair in town, I didn't even hesitate. Sounded fun. Cotton candy, prizes, rides. Easy. We met by the ticket booth just as the sky was getting dark. He waved when he saw me, smiling like he'd been waiting forever. He looked normal enough. Hoodie, jeans, messy hair like he rushed getting ready. He bought the wristbands for the rides, insisting it was his treat. When he handed mine to me, his hands were shaking a little, but I assumed he was just nervous. The carnival music boomed around us, and the smell of popcorn hit me right away. Kids ran past us holding giant stuffed animals. Parents argued over which food stand had the shortest line. Everything felt exactly how a fair should feel. At first. Jay said he wanted to go somewhere quieter. He pointed toward the edge of the carnival where the lights weren't as bright and the crowds thinned out. I laughed and said we barely got here, but he insisted we come back to the main area later. He said the best rides were away from the crowds. We walked through the busier parts first. Games where people tried to toss rings over bottles, a spinning ride that looked like it would make me puke, a clown diving into water while people threw balls. Jay didn't even look at the attractions. He kept glancing at the exits and corners like he was tracking something. I asked if he wanted food, and he said no, not hungry. I asked if he wanted to try a game, and he said those ones were rigged anyway. He kept steering me away from places where crowds formed, always pushing us toward the darker edges near the storage trailers and staff-only entrances. Every time we passed a security guard, Jay lowered his head. I tried to ignore the weird vibe, hoping maybe he was just shy about being in public, but his eyes were everywhere except on me. We stopped near a fence where barely anyone walked. It was quiet enough that the music sounded muffled. He started talking about random stuff. How he didn't like crowds. How people were unpredictable. How he preferred to hang out where it was quiet so he could pay attention. Pay attention to what? I told him maybe we should go back and ride the Ferris wheel. He said we would in a bit. His voice was calm, but his hand was gripping his wrist like he was holding himself together. I stepped back a little, pretending I was adjusting my wristband. Then I heard crying behind us. A little kid, maybe 6 or 7, stumbled toward us clutching a half-deflated balloon. His face was bright red from crying. He looked lost. Before I could say anything, the kid looked up and froze. His eyes went huge, and he pointed his tiny shaking finger straight at Jay. He sobbed harder, screaming, telling someone to get him away from that man. Not around us, not behind us. Him, specifically him. Jay didn't move. His expression didn't change. He just stared back at the kid with this blank face like he was trying to figure out if he'd been recognized. I took a step away from him without even thinking. The kid kept crying and pointing until a woman ran over. His mom. She grabbed him and held him close, glaring at Jay like she already knew exactly who he was. She yelled to the nearest security guard. The guard ran out something fast. Suddenly, everything sped up at once. 2 officers from the carnival security rushed in, hands already out like they expected a fight. Jay stepped back like he was ready to bolt, but the officers told him not to move. One grabbed his arm and pinned him to the fence while asking me how long I'd known him. I barely got out that it was a first date. The officer said a kid had gone missing earlier that day near the parking area. They'd been searching everywhere. The mom was crying now, yelling that her kid saw Jay near the exit earlier trying to lead him away. The kid nodded, terrified, clinging to her like his life depended on it. I looked at Jay, waiting for him to deny it. He didn't. He didn't say a word. The officers tightened their grip, one cuffing his wrist while calling someone on the radio. People around us started staring, whispering, phones out recording. Jay looked at me, finally showing some kind of expression. Not fear, not guilt. Annoyance, like I had ruined his night by being there when everything fell apart. One officer asked me again if I helped him. The thought made my stomach twist. I swore I didn't even know him. They asked why he was leading me outside the main crowd. Asked if he promised me something. Asked if I saw anything suspicious. I didn't know how to answer. Everything about tonight suddenly became suspicious. Before the officers could escort him away, Jay jerked forward like he might run. They slammed him to the ground so fast I yelled out in shock. He yelled too, cursing under his breath, trying to kick one of them off. The kid screamed again. The mom shielded him with her arms. More security showed up. They cuffed both his hands, dragged him to his feet, and marched him toward the exit. He looked back at me when he passed, his breathing fast, eyes burning like he hated me for seeing him get caught. Then he spit out just one sentence. "You almost made this worth it." I didn't know what that meant. I still don't want to know what that meant. Police came soon after and questioned me. Asked if I had noticed his clothing before we met. Asked if he mentioned going anywhere else after the carnival. Asked if he talked to any kids while we were walking. They said Jay was already on a watch list for trying to lure children at public places. He'd been banned from multiple events in another city. They checked my ID, checked my phone, made sure he didn't have my address. They told me I was unbelievably lucky. Some people think danger hides in dark alleys or abandoned buildings. But sometimes danger buys you a wristband and tries to win you a stuffed bear. I drove home with my stomach twisted into knots. The carnival lights in the distance looked like warning signs instead of something fun. I can't walk past playgrounds now without scanning every adult nearby, wondering if someone else like Jay is just waiting for a parent to look away. And I keep thinking about that stupid sentence he said. You almost made this worth it. Like he went there planning something awful, and I was either a distraction or the backup plan. I thought I'd done everything right this time. My friend always told me not to take a girl somewhere crowded where she might feel uncomfortable, and not somewhere too romantic because then it feels forced. So I planned something simple. Dinner at a casual spot, then a walk through the city. Her name was Leela. She was quiet in her messages but funny when she wanted to be. She liked weird trivia and late-night adventures, she said. Halfway through dinner, she asked where I worked. I told her I worked at a big office building downtown doing its stuff. Mostly resetting passwords and pretending I understood printer errors better than everyone else. She asked what it looked like inside and if it was fancy like those tech company movies. I laughed and said it was mostly cubicles and sad motivational posters. She asked if she could see it. I thought she was joking, but she leaned forward and said she really wanted to see where I spent my days. She promised she wouldn't break anything. Normally I'd say no. Big no. Huge no. But I had my ID on me and I knew the security guy on weekends. I told her I could show her the lobby and maybe the break room if the alarms were turned off. She smiled like I'd made her whole night. The streets were quiet as we walked there. She kept close to me like she was trying not to stand out. Every time someone passed us, she dropped her head like she didn't want anyone seeing her face. I asked if she was cold. She said she was just not used to being out like this. We reached the building. The lobby lights were dim, but not fully off yet. I scanned my badge and the door unlocked with a beep. Leela stepped inside before I even held the door open again. She spun around slowly like she was seeing a castle. There was a motion sensor system deeper inside the building that only security could control. I knew that. I also knew we weren't supposed to go past the first floor after hours without clearance. But she begged to see the workspace area, just one floor up. I gave in. I shouldn't have. We took the elevator. She didn't ask questions about my job this time. She asked where the cameras were. She asked if anyone could see us right then, not in a flirty, joking way, in a serious, worried way. The doors opened and the lights above the cubicles flickered on automatically. She walked between the desks like she was searching for something. I pointed out my little corner cubicle with the outdated computer and a photo of my dog pinned up. She smiled for real this time, the first relaxed smile since dinner. I turned to show her the break room. That's when the red lights flashed. Motion detectors. I froze. No one was supposed to be here. When the sensors picked anything up after hours, the building system sent an automatic alert to the monitoring company, and then the police. I told Lila we needed to go right now. She didn't move. She stared down the row of cubicles toward the exit stairs like something was waiting there. Then she whispered that we had to take the back hallway instead. I didn't even know she knew there was a back hallway. We rushed through the maze of desks. I could hear a faint alarm in the distance, a silent kind meant for security dispatch. Lila kept glancing behind us, breathing fast. She didn't look scared of getting in trouble. She looked scared of getting caught. I pushed the stairwell door open and we hurried down. My heart was pounding so loud I thought it might set off another alarm. We made it into the lobby just as the front doors burst open. Police. Guns drawn. They yelled for both of us to get on the ground. I shouted that I worked here, that I had my ID, but no one listened. They tackled me, forced my face to the floor. I saw flashlights sweeping the room. Officers shouting. Radios buzzing. I looked up for Leela. She was gone. One of the officers asked where my partner went. My partner. Like we planned a break-in together. He said cameras showed someone matching her description entering earlier this week around the same time another alert was triggered. Someone who escaped before security arrived. They searched the entire building for her while I sat handcuffed against the elevator wall, trying not to shake. The security guy arrived and confirmed I worked there, but he kept looking at me like he didn't fully believe my story. The police demanded to know how I knew her. I told them it was a first date, that we met online, that she begged me to show her the building. They asked her full name. I gave it. They checked it. Nothing came up. No ID under that name. No driver's license. No recent address. It was like she never existed. While they questioned me, officers kept scanning hallways and stairwells. Radios crackled with updates. Nothing. After an hour, they let me stand up but asked me to stay within sight. A detective asked again how long I had known her. When I said a week, he muttered something like they always say that. I told them to check my texts. They did. They stared at the screen. Then they asked why every message from her disappeared the second they opened the chat. Not archived. Not deleted. Just gone. I didn't have an answer. One officer said it might take time to verify everything. Another said I should consider this a warning. A warning for what? For being stupid enough to trust someone. When they finally let me leave, I walked out feeling like the ground wasn't real. I sat in my car for almost 20 minutes staring at the passenger seat like she might reappear there. Once I got home, I checked the app we matched on. Her profile was gone. No trace of our chat. No photos. Nothing. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It said, "Thanks for the tour. I'll make sure they think it was all you next time." I blocked the number immediately, but blocking a ghost doesn't feel like protection. It feels like pretending the door is locked when you don't even know where the door it is. Sometimes I drive past my workplace late at night and just stare at the building. The lights in the cubicles flicker on sometimes even when sensors shouldn't be triggered. It makes me wonder if she ever really left. Or if she's still inside, hiding between the desks, waiting for someone else stupid enough to bring her in. I always liked movie dates because you don't have to talk nonstop, and if the conversation is awkward, you can just focus on the movie. So when I matched with this guy named Owen, and he asked if I wanted to see the new horror film, I said yes straight away. He looked friendly in his photos. Kind of goofy, actually. He said he worked with computers and really needed a break from work stress. I figured a chill movie night was perfect. We met outside the theater. He waved like he hadn't seen another human in weeks. He seemed nervous, but not in a scary way at first. Just fidgety, always adjusting his jacket, tapping his foot. He bought the tickets before I got there, which I thought was nice. We grabbed popcorn and sat near the middle, not too close to the screen. The movie started and everything felt normal. We shared snacks, laughed quietly at dumb scenes, and he kept glancing at me like he was happy I actually showed up. But about 20 minutes in, right when the scary part was about to happen, he leaned over and whispered that he needed the toilet. I told him to go quickly so he wouldn't miss anything. He walked down the row and disappeared. I expected him to be gone like 3 minutes. Instead, 10 minutes passed. Then 15. I started worrying maybe he got sick or didn't like the movie and bailed, which would have been so rude. I thought about texting him, but I didn't want to look desperate. I tried to focus on the film, but when it hit 20 minutes, I was sure he left. Then he came back. But not like a normal person just walking back to their seat. He practically slid into it, out of breath, and sat stiff like he'd been running or hiding. I whispered asking if he was okay. He nodded way too fast, clutching something under his jacket. I thought maybe he bought sweets, and wasn't supposed to, so he smuggled them in weirdly. But then the edge of a black drawstring bag peeked out. The movie was loud, but I could still hear a strange clinking sound from the bag like something solid knocking around inside. He kept holding it close to his chest like someone would yank it from his hands if he let go for even a second. I asked what was in the bag. He whispered, "Don't worry about it." That made it worse instantly. Now, I couldn't focus on the movie at all. He kept leaning forward like he was scanning the audience. He checked the exits over and over. Every time the theater door opened a tiny bit, he tensed like someone was coming for him. I wanted to get up and leave right then, but I was stuck in the middle of the row and didn't want to cause a scene. I kept telling myself maybe there was a normal explanation. Maybe he picked up something someone left behind. Maybe he was holding something for a friend. But that clinking kept happening, and it sounded like plastic on plastic. Then a phone buzzed faintly inside the bag. He flinched and shoved it deeper under his jacket. My whole body turned cold. When the movie ended and the lights came up, I could see more clearly. One of the phones in his bag lit up from a notification, and the cracked screen reflected through the thin fabric. Then another, and another. Different size phones. different colors. I realized he hadn't gone to the toilet at all. He had been stealing. People around us stood up, reaching for their pockets, looking confused when they couldn't find their phones. A girl in a row ahead started panicking, saying her phone was gone. Then a guy shouted the same thing. More people checked. More panic. Owen stood up fast and whispered we needed to leave now. His voice shook like he knew what was coming next. He grabbed my hand, rough and desperate, and tried to pull me into the aisle. I jerked my hand away and said I wasn't going anywhere until he explained what he did. He just said, please, like he was genuinely terrified. We got halfway to the exit when 2 security guards stepped in front of us. They asked everyone to stay seated for a moment. People were yelling about stolen phones. Some were crying. The guards asked Owen to open the bag he was holding. His face went white. He took a tiny step back like he might run. The guards noticed and grabbed his arms. The bag fell to the floor. When it hit, phones spilled everywhere. At least 10, maybe more. People gasped. A few pointed and said, that's my phone. One guy tried to lunge at Owen, but the guards pushed him back. The guards asked me how long I'd been helping him. I couldn't even process the accusation before they grabbed my wrist too. I kept saying I met him just tonight, that I barely knew him, that I didn't touch the bag, but no one was listening. To everyone else in that room, I was standing right beside him. That was enough to make me look guilty. Security dragged both of us toward the lobby. The phones kept buzzing inside the bag like a bunch of insects trapped together. Owen didn't fight the guards. He didn't look at me either. He looked at the floor like everything was already over for him. Outside the theater, police were already pulling up. Officers questioned us separately. They asked if we planned the theft together. They asked if I distracted people while he grabbed their phones. I kept repeating this was a first date, that I thought he just needed the toilet, that I didn't know anything about the bag. One officer asked why I followed him out so quickly at the end if I had nothing to hide. I didn't even know how to explain panic without sounding suspicious. After what felt like an hour, they checked the camera footage inside the theater. They finally believed I wasn't involved. They said Owen was a known thief who targeted dark places like movie theaters. He forced open bags while people were glued to the screen. He used dates as cover because it made him look normal. He had done this before. The officer told me I was lucky I wasn't more involved. That sometimes people like him make their date carry the bag so they don't get caught with the stolen stuff. Hearing that made my stomach flip. Before they put Owen into the police car, he turned his head just enough to look at me. His expression wasn't angry. It wasn't scared. It was disappointed. Like the only thing that went wrong tonight was me catching him. I blocked his number that same second, deleted the app, went home feeling like the world was full of people pretending to be harmless. Now whenever I go anywhere public, I check for the exits first. I watch the people around me too closely. And every time my phone buzzes in a dark room, I cover it with both hands. Because I can't stop thinking about what those people must have felt when they reached for their phones and found nothing there. I thought going hiking for our first date was a cool idea. It felt adventurous and different from the usual awkward coffee meetups. Her name was Tara. We matched because she liked nature, and she told me she did this trail a lot. I figured if she already knew it well, I didn't have to worry about getting lost or anything. I packed a bottle of water, wore my best attempt at outdoor shoes, and drove to the national park to meet her near the trail entrance. She showed up wearing a black hoodie tied around her waist, leggings, and boots that looked way more serious than mine. She didn't hug or shake hands, just smiled quickly and said we should get going before the sun gets too hot. I liked that. She seemed comfortable and confident, not awkward or shy. We walked for about 15 minutes making small talk. She asked about my job, my dog, places I traveled. She wasn't flirty, but she wasn't cold either, just calm, focused. The forest was quiet, except for birds, and the path had this peaceful vibe to it. She said she knew a really nice viewpoint not many people went to anymore. I didn't think twice about following her. After a while, she stopped to tie her bootlace. She knelt, and her hoodie slipped, revealing something tucked into the waistband at the back of her leggings. A handle, metallic. I only saw it for a second before she yanked her hoodie up again. I tried not to stare. Maybe she carried a pocket tool for safety. It wasn't that crazy, especially for a woman hiking with a guy she barely knew. We kept walking, and she suddenly said she needed to drink water. She stepped off the path a bit, crouched near some rocks. I turned away politely, checking my phone signal. That's when I heard the sound of metal clinking against stone. I looked over just enough to see her slide a bloody knife under a flat rock. Not like a kitchen knife either, more like a hunting knife. Fresh blood smeared across the blade. My throat clenched. My brain didn't know whether to run or pretend I didn't see anything. I must have made a noise because she stood up fast and wiped her hands on the grass. She smiled at me, but her eyes didn't smile with her. She asked if I was okay. I lied and said yeah, just tired. She nodded and said we were almost at the viewpoint. I kept telling myself maybe she found it on the trail and didn't want to carry it. But why hide it instead of reporting it to someone? Why act so casual about something so intense? We reached this small clearing where you could see the valley below. It would look beautiful if my mind wasn't racing. She sat on a rock and asked if I wanted a snack. I told her I wasn't hungry. I tried to act normal so she wouldn't suspect anything, but my eyes kept darting to the path behind us. I needed a reason to leave. Then I heard voices in the distance. Not hiker voices. Radio voices. Deep, urgent voices. Park ranger voices. Tara heard them too. She stiffened and stood up. She told me we should head back right now. Her tone wasn't calm anymore. It was demanding. We walked faster. The radios got louder. The path curved and suddenly 2 park rangers appeared ahead. They were talking into walkie-talkies and looking around like they were tracking someone. They saw us and stopped. One of them asked if everything was all right and if we were hiking alone. Tara spoke before I could. She said yes, we were alone and we hadn't seen anyone else. My heart pounded so loud I thought they could hear it. The rangers' radio crackled saying they found a body on the trail down below. Knife wounds. Fresh. The ranger stared at Tara, then at me. I wanted to scream that I saw her hide the knife, that I had nothing to do with this, but Tara stepped closer and gently squeezed my arm like she knew every thought in my head. That grip felt like a silent threat. The ranger asked us to come with them for questioning. Tara said we were heading out anyway and kept walking like she didn't hear him properly. The ranger blocked her path. The other ranger moved behind me. They said we matched the description given by another hiker who read someone suspicious running through the area earlier. Tara laughed nervously and said they must be mixing us up with someone else. The ranger stepped to the side and whispered into his radio. Seconds later, 2 more officers appeared. Not rangers. Police, with cuffs ready. Tara looked at me, eyes wide, like she was begging me to back her up. But the officers weren't waiting. They grabbed her and pinned her to the ground while she screamed that she didn't do anything. Then she screamed my name, told them I helped her, told them I was with her the whole time, told them we hid it together. I shouted that she was lying, that I didn't know what was going on, but the rangers had their hands on me now too. They kept asking where the knife was. I said I didn't know. They said witnesses saw us together near the last spot she was seen alone. She fought like someone possessed, screaming my name over and over, making me sound like her partner in whatever she did. They cuffed her and dragged her off the ground. Her voice cracked as she yelled I was just as guilty, that I'd regret pretending otherwise. I still don't know why she said that. Maybe she thought accusing me would make her look less guilty. The rangers questioned me for over an hour. They asked the same thing different ways, testing if my story changed. I told them it was a first date. I barely knew her. I didn't hide anything. They didn't believe me at first, but eventually they spoke with other hikers who confirmed they saw Tara alone earlier near where the body was found. Finally, they let me go. I walked back to my car shaking so hard I nearly dropped my keys. I drove home too fast, checking the mirror like she'd somehow escape and come after me. Later that night, a detective called to say Tara confessed. She said she found the knife but lied so many times during the interview that they knew she was involved somehow. They found traces on her clothes they're still testing. Everything I believed about meeting someone nice online just snapped that day. You think the worst thing that can happen on a first date is awkward silence or a bad kiss. I never thought I'd be walking a murder suspect straight to the evidence dump without even realizing it. I should have known something was off from the moment he told me his phone was always on. His name was Rowan. We met on Tinder, and he came across as confident but quiet, like he had a lot going on but didn't want to talk about it. He suggested meeting at this little ramen place a few blocks from the station. I thought it sounded low-key and perfect. He showed up exactly on time. Not early, not late. Exactly. He didn't hug me or shake my hand. Just nodded and said I looked nice, like he was reading from a script. He kept one hand in his coat pocket the entire walk to the restaurant. We sat down in a booth in the back. The waiter handed us menus, and Rowan barely read his. He just ordered water and stared at the entrance like he was waiting for someone else to show up. I asked what he did for work, and he said logistics. That was it. No detail. So I talked about what I do, trying to save the vibe. He smiled every now and then, but his eyes never matched it. Then his phone buzzed. He pulled it out so fast it made me jump. The screen said, "The Handler." No joke. That was the actual name saved in his phone. He answered instantly. Didn't say hi, didn't joke, didn't even look at me. He just said, "Yes," paused, then, "I'm here," then hung up without a goodbye. He slid the phone face down and said it was no one important. I wasn't stupid. That wasn't some spam caller or a boss checking it. And who names someone the Handler? That sounded like crime movie stuff. I tried to brush it off at first. I figured maybe it was a code name for his boss. Weird but possible. Then his phone buzzed again, and again, and again. Same name popping up each time. He'd answer every call like he was reporting his location. Then he'd try to snap back into the date like nothing happened. Halfway through our food, he said we should finish quickly. I asked if something was wrong. He said things were changing faster than expected. It sounded like he was talking to me and someone else at the same time in his head. Finally, I told him if he needed to leave, we could reschedule. He shook his head and said no, he needed me to stay with him right now. Needed. Not wanted. Needed. I started planning my escape. I grabbed my bag and suggested we leave since he seemed anxious. He nodded too quickly, like he'd been waiting for me to say that. We paid and walked out. As soon as we stepped onto the sidewalk, two people sitting at a bus stop stood up and started walking behind us. Close. Too close. Rowan noticed them and sped up. I followed because I didn't know what else to do. His phone rang again. He answered and said, "They're already here," before hanging up. No panic in his voice, just acceptance. Then everything happened at once. A car screeched to a stop in front of us. Doors opened. Two men in plain clothes jumped out, flashing badges and shouting. They grabbed me first, pinned my arms behind my back. One yelled that I was being detained for assisting a fugitive. A fugitive? I screamed that I didn't even know this guy properly. I just met him. But they weren't listening. They kept saying I was seen escorting him, helping him stay hidden. Rowan backed away from me slowly. He didn't help me. He didn't even try. One of the men reached for him, but he ducked and sprinted down the street with this sudden burst of energy like he was trained to run. They chased after him, but he disappeared around the corner like he planned that escape 1,000 times. The men holding me asked how long I'd known him. I told them it was literally a first date. They asked if I knew he was wanted for skipping a court appearance and being part of a criminal group under investigation. They accused me of acting as a lookout. I kept repeating that I had no idea what they were talking about. I told them to check my phone, check my messages, check everything. I told them I thought he just had a stressful job. They questioned me right there on the street while people stared like I was some dangerous accomplice. After a while, they seemed convinced I wasn't part of anything. They let me go but warned me that Rowan might try contacting me again and I needed to report it if he did. I walked home shaking, looking over my shoulder constantly. That whole night, every time a car drove past outside, I thought it was him, or the handler. The next day, Rowan's profile was gone. Deleted like he never existed. The chat vanished too, leaving a blank space where his messages were. I reported his account anyway. I even blocked the number he used to text me before the date. But I can't stop thinking about how planned he seemed. How he needed me with him. How those calls were random. Someone once told me criminals hide in plain sight, but no one warns you that they also date like normal people do. Swipe right. Make small talk. Sit across from you at dinner and pretend it's love when really it's cover. I check my phone every time it buzzes now, terrified that one day it'll light up with that name. The Handler. I should have said no when she suggested we hang out at her apartment for the first date. It sounded too fast, too personal, but she said she was anxious in public places. Her name was May. We talked for about a week on an app and she seemed cool, a little intense but cool. She said she was a great cook and wanted to make pasta for me. I figured as long as I kept my location on and told my group chat where I was, it would be fine. When I got to her building, everything looked normal on the outside. It was one of those old brick apartments with small balconies and those ugly tan doors everyone paints over. She buzzed me in before I'd even knocked. The hallway was silent, like weirdly silent. No TVs, no footsteps, just my shoes squeaking on the old floor. I found her door at the end of the hall, and the first thing I noticed was the locks. Not one or two. 7. 7 different locks stacked from top to bottom. Chains, deadbolts, even some metal sliding thing I'd never seen before. There was also a camera mounted right above the door pointing into the hallway. I stood there staring at it for a second before knocking. She opened the door super fast like she was waiting right behind it. She smiled, grabbed my wrist, and pulled me inside before I could even say hi. Then she shut the door and locked every single lock again, one by one, fast but practiced like she did that 20 times a day. Her apartment looked totally normal compared to the door. Cozy furniture, candles lit. A movie paused on the TV like she wanted everything to feel relaxed. She acted sweet and chatty, talking about sauce and pasta shapes like nothing was strange. But I couldn't stop glancing at the door. She noticed me looking and laughed nervously. She said she just liked being safe because the building had some weird people living in it. But even then, the cameras made no sense. There wasn't just the one outside. There were 2 more inside her living room pointing toward the windows and the balcony door. Little red dots glowing like tiny eyes watching everything. She never explained those. She offered me a drink and I tried to focus on her instead of the surveillance system she apparently lived inside. She talked a lot. About pets she used to have, about her job she hated. But she barely let me finish a sentence before moving to a new topic. It felt like she was trying too hard to distract us both from something. After a while, she relaxed a bit and sat down next to me on the couch, close enough that our shoulders touched. The sauce simmered in the kitchen, and everything almost felt normal for a few minutes. Then a loud bang echoed from the hallway outside. She jumped up so fast the blanket on her lap fell to the floor. She ran to the door and grabbed the little slider bowl like she was ready to shove it even deeper. She stared at the door without blinking. I got up too and asked if she was expecting someone. She shook her head, eyes locked on that door like someone was about to break through it. After a minute of silence, she forced a smile and said it was just someone dropping something. But the smile didn't match her eyes at all. We sat back down, but the mood was ruined. She kept asking random questions mid-sentence, interrupting herself, checking her phone, checking the hallway camera feed on her TV. She even muted the movie so she could hear better. I told her I could leave if she was uncomfortable having someone over, trying to give her an easy out. She grabbed my hand and said no, and that she just had trouble trusting people, but she liked that I showed up anyway. Before I could respond, someone knocked on the door. Not a gentle knock, a hard one, the kind that demands attention. She froze. Her whole body went stiff. Her grip on my hand tightened painfully. Another knock. Then a voice called out saying it was the police. My stomach dropped. She let go of me and walked toward the door slowly like she was walking through mud. She didn't look through the door camera monitor. She didn't ask who it was. She just whispered why now under her breath. The police knocked again louder, shouting that they got a call from someone inside this apartment screaming for help. I felt my heart trying to escape my chest. I said I didn't scream. She said she didn't either. But the way she said it sounded like she was trying to convince herself to. They told us they needed to come inside. May shook her head over and over. She backed away from the door and whispered that we couldn't let them in. Each lock on that door suddenly felt like it belonged there for a reason. A bad reason. She pulled me close and said if I let them in, I'd ruin everything. Ruin what? I asked. She didn't answer. The police kept knocking. They said they would force entry if they had to. I looked at the cameras, the windows, the chains. I felt like I stepped into something way bigger than a nervous girl with trust issues. Finally, I stepped toward the door. I didn't shout or act tough. I just said quietly that I was going to open it. She grabbed my shirt and begged me not to. Her voice cracked like she was seconds from breaking apart. Before either of us could do anything else, the police rammed the door. The locks held, but the whole frame shook. May screamed, then shoved me backward, yelling that I betrayed her. I tripped over the coffee table and hit the floor. The police rammed again, and more locks started rattling like they were about to snap. May backed into the corner, covering her ears. I crawled to the door and yelled that I was fine, that I wasn't kidnapped, that nobody was screaming. The door finally swung open after they cut the last lock. 3 officers burst in with flashlights and radios. They looked around, confused at what they found, me on the floor and May crying but refusing to speak to them. They asked me if I was hurt. I said no, just scared and confused. They took May to a separate room to calm her down. One officer explained that a neighbor in the building read footage of someone screaming inside her apartment earlier. Something the camera picked up. They thought she might be in danger. I said maybe it was her TV. I didn't know. I didn't want to get her in trouble. The officer said she'd been reported before, multiple times. Neighbors hearing screams, her refusing to open the door. Cameras everywhere, but no proof of a crime. They asked if I wanted to leave. I didn't even hesitate. I grabbed my jacket and left without looking back. The last thing I saw was May staring at me while the officers talked to her, her eyes silently begging me not to tell them anything. Like she had secrets in those locks and cameras that I got too close to seeing. I still don't know what or who she was terrified of, and I don't know who screamed before I arrived or if it was even her. But sometimes at night, I picture her locked inside that apartment with all those cameras. And I wonder if she was really hiding from someone outside, or if she was hiding someone inside. I always thought bar dates were the easiest way to get to know someone. Loud enough so awkward silences don't feel weird, quiet enough to actually talk if things go well. So when this guy named Elliot suggested a bar downtown that he said had amazing wings, I figured why not. He seemed normal online. Nothing strange in our chats. He even joked about how terrible he was at flirting, which made him feel harmless in a way. I showed up a little early because I was nervous and wanted to grab a seat where I could see the entrance. The place wasn't packed, but there were enough people to feel like a typical Friday night. Most of them looked like regulars, chatting with the bartender, laughing like they'd been there 100 times. The moment Elliot walked through the door, the mood inside flipped. It was subtle at first. A couple of guys near the bar turned their heads quickly. Then I noticed whispers. Not regular gossip whispers, the kind where someone sees something they're not supposed to see. Elliot didn't look dangerous or anything. He just walked in wearing a denim jacket and a nervous smile like he was hoping I wouldn't bail. He spotted me, waved, and came over. As soon as he sat down, I saw 2 men at the bar watching him in the mirror behind the counter. One leaned toward the bartender and muttered something under his breath. The bartender stared straight at Elliot like he was scanning a threat. I tried to pretend I didn't notice. Maybe Elliot had history there. Maybe he caused drama once and never lived it down. It happens. People get banned from places because of fights or being drunk idiots. I didn't want to judge him too fast. He ordered waters for both of us, saying he didn't want to drink too much on a first date. I mentioned getting wings and he agreed but kept looking around like he was checking exits. His smile was nice, but it never reached his eyes. They looked exhausted, scared, maybe stressed. I asked how his week was, and every time he answered, his eyes would flick toward the door or the people staring at him. The whispers got louder. One guy shook his head in disgust like Elliot personally ruined his life. I tried to ignore them, but it was impossible. Finally, I quietly asked Elliot if he'd been there before. He froze for a second and then said no, first time. But the way he said it didn't sound real at all. One of the guys near the bar got up and walked toward the bathroom, but slowed down in passing our table. He looked Elliot up and down like he was confirming something, then immediately picked up his phone and walked faster. The bartender leaned forward and spoke softly to someone under the bar, like a phone call. I caught the words "yep," and he came back. That's when my heart dropped. They weren't just gossiping. They were reporting him. I asked Elliot again if everything was okay. He swallowed hard and said he hadn't been back in this area in a long time, that he wasn't supposed to be here. He tried to laugh it off as if he meant the neighborhood in general, but his hands were shaking. His fingers kept tapping the table like a countdown. Every guy in that bar kept glancing at the TVs mounted in the corners. Sports was on one screen. But on the other, a CCTV feed of the entrance popped up suddenly. Elliot's face showed up huge across the screen for a split second before switching back to sports. It looked like the bartender switched cameras just to confirm who he was. I felt every muscle in my body lock up. Elliot saw the screen change too. His jaw clenched. He told me he didn't want to ruin my night, that he would leave now so I wouldn't get dragged into anything. His voice was shaking. Before he could stand, the door slammed open. Officers rushed in. Not slow, not calm, full tactical gear, shouting commands instantly. Everyone ducked. A drink spilled. Chairs scraped back. My whole body jolted like a spring went off inside me. They yelled his full name. They said he violated a restriction order, that he wasn't allowed within a certain distance of specific locations. Elliot stood with his hands up. No fighting. No arguing. He just whispered to me that he was sorry, over and over like I was the one he wronged most. The officers grabbed him, twisting his arms behind his back and pushing him toward the door. He didn't resist. His head hung low. It almost looked like he'd been expecting this since the moment he walked in. As they dragged him out, one officer turned to the bartender and nodded like they did this before. The bartender nodded back. Someone in the corner muttered good riddance. I just sat there frozen, like none of our nerves knew what to do. I couldn't believe how fast everything flipped. A detective came over to me and asked if I was with him. I said it was a first date, that I didn't know anything. The detective gave this tired sigh like he had said the same conversation too many times. He explained that Elliot had been issued a long-term exclusion from the entire district, not allowed in any bar, restaurant, store, anything within certain blocks. Why? I asked. He said Elliot had been obsessed with a woman who used to live around there. He stalked her for months, showed up at her work, followed her home, threatened guys she talked to, made scenes in public places. Police banned him from the district. They warned every business to call if he ever showed up again. The detective said Elliot had been spotted sneaking around earlier that day. CCTV flagged him within seconds of him entering the bar. The bartender saw the notice automatically pop up on his system. They checked my ID, asked a few more questions. Then they told me I was free to go, but advised I'd lock him online and never contact him again. Walking to my car, my legs felt like they belonged to someone else. I checked over my shoulder 100 times. I kept replaying everything he said in my head, every nervous glance, every time he pretended nothing was wrong. When I got home, I deleted every dating app off my phone. Then I sat in the dark thinking about how close I came to being in his personal list of people to stalk. How easily I could have been the reason he came back to that district. He didn't look dangerous. He didn't act crazy. He just wanted company, and that made it worse. I used to think fancy restaurants were only for anniversaries or rich people posting their food online, but this guy picked one for our first date. His name was Lucian, which already sounded like someone who'd never touched a drive-thru in his life. He messaged me on Bumble a few days earlier, and everything about him seemed calm and smooth. He used full sentences, proper grammar, nothing creepy. His pictures looked like he traveled a lot, always wearing nice clothes and standing in front of pretty places like he belonged there. He asked if I was free for dinner and suggested this rooftop restaurant downtown. Not gonna lie, I felt underprepared from the moment I saw the place. There were chandeliers bigger than my entire room, and everyone dressed like they were heading to a red carpet event. I showed up early and spent 5 minutes in the bathroom debating if I should just walk out and pretend my phone died. But then he arrived and smiled like he was genuinely happy to see me, which made me relax. Lucian looked like the kind of guy who always smelled like expensive cologne. He pulled my chair out like some old-school gentleman and asked if I was nervous in a teasing way. He seemed way more comfortable there than I ever could be. The waiter handed us menus with no prices on them. That alone made me sweat. I told Lucian I could pay for my dish, but he waved it off instantly, saying he insisted on paying in cash. Not in a bragging way, just like it was totally normal. When the waiter came to take our order, Lucian slid a stack of bills out of his pocket. It was thick. Like movie drug dealer thick. I joked if he robbed a bank earlier, trying to break the tension, and he gave the smallest smile without answering. The dinner started out nice. He asked real questions about my life, not basic ones. He listened when I talked. He didn't check his phone once. It actually felt refreshing. But he also seemed weirdly focused on how long everything took. He kept glancing toward the elevator like he was waiting for someone to show up. Every time the waiter walked by, Lucian followed him with his eyes. And every time a group stood to leave, he watched them until they were completely out of sight. I asked if he came there often, and he said it was his first time too. Then he quickly changed the subject to our drinks. His hands never stopped moving, though, tapping the table, tapping his leg, adjusting his jacket, like his body was counting down to something. Halfway through the meal, he excused himself to take a call outside, but didn't bring his phone. He just walked to the balcony and stared at the streets below like he was scouting something. When he came back, he apologized and said he thought he saw someone he recognized. Dessert came. It looked like a piece of art more than food. Lucian seemed to relax for a second. He complimented the view and said he liked the lights on the buildings. It was peaceful for like 1 minute. Then everything in the room changed. A buzz ran across the floor like electricity. The elevator dinged, but no one stepped out. The music stopped mid-song. The waiters froze like they got a signal to stand still. I heard a woman gasp at a nearby table. And then, out of nowhere, the windows facing the balcony lit up with red laser dots dancing through the glass. Before I could ask what was happening, the doors of the restaurant burst open and a SWAT team rushed inside. Fully geared. Helmets, shields, rifles aimed. People screamed and ducked under tables. Chairs slammed against the floor. One officer yelled for Lucian to put his hands where they could see them. They said his name clearly. They didn't hesitate. They weren't confused. They came for him. Lucian didn't move at first. He looked at me like he wanted to say something important but didn't get the chance. He slowly stood up with his hands up. One of the officers grabbed the stack of cash off our table and held a small device over it. A loud beep fired off instantly, and the officer shouted something about the bills being marked. I didn't fully understand, but I got enough. The money was stolen. Recently, like earlier that day recently. 2 officers slammed Lucian down so hard the table shook. Plates shattered. That gorgeous dessert went flipping across the carpet. Lucian didn't yell or fight. He just said quietly to me that he was sorry I got mixed into it, like we were talking about a spilled drink or something casual. The police zip-tied my hands to at first because they didn't know if I was part of it. They questioned every diner, but they separated me from everyone else and took me into a different room. They asked how long I'd known him, where we met, if I helped plan anything. They told me Lucian was connected to a robbery earlier that afternoon. An armed robbery. The catch was traceable because it had special tracking dye inside the bands. They asked if I noticed anything unusual. I laughed nervously and said I noticed everything was unusual. I told them it was a first date, that I barely even knew his last name. They looked at each other like they'd heard that excuse 1,000 times. They let me go after midnight. My phone was blowing up with texts from friends wondering if I was alive because news helicopters were circling the building and broadcasting everything. I didn't respond to anyone. I just sat in the back of a taxi with my heartbeat still punching me from the inside. The next morning, I Googled his name. Nothing showed up. Like Lucian wasn't even real. No arrest articles. No mugshot. No social media. No anything. The news only mentioned a suspected robber apprehended during a tactical response. Now I keep thinking about that tiny smile he gave me when I asked about robbing a bank. I thought it was just a joke. I still had the fancy restaurant receipt in my purse because the police forgot to take it. It has a timestamp printed on it. 30 minutes after the robbery happened. And every time I look at it, my stomach drops because that means one thing. He took me on a date using stolen money. I honestly didn't think anything was wrong when she showed up. People get nervous on first dates all the time, right? Her name was Rena. We matched a week before, and she seemed shy but nice. She didn't send weird messages or anything. She suggested we meet at a small diner by the bus station because she liked the milkshakes there. It sounded simple and safe. I thought this date would finally be normal for once. But the second she sat down across from me, I knew something was off. She kept turning her head every few seconds to look at the front door. She wasn't trying to hide it either. It was like she expected someone to burst in any moment. I tried to joke about her being too excited to see the burgers, but she didn't laugh. She just nodded like she didn't actually hear what I said. Her hands were shaking slightly when she picked up the menu. She didn't look at it, though. Her eyes were glued to the door. I told myself she might just have social anxiety or maybe an ex who tends to show up uninvited. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. We ordered food and she barely touched her drink. She kept asking what time it was, checking the windows, checking her phone, and locking the screen really fast like she didn't want me seeing anything on it. When the waitress walked by, Rena flinched. And when the door opened for someone else, she nearly spilled her glass. I asked if she was okay. She said yes way too quickly. She said she just didn't like crowds. But we were in a half-empty diner with old music playing and a handful of truck drivers eating late dinners. Nothing scary, nothing intense. Still, she couldn't relax. She leaned forward quietly and asked me if I parked close. I said yeah, my car was right outside. She glanced through the window to make sure. Then she whispered if we could leave soon because she didn't feel safe there anymore. At that point, I should have asked more questions. But she looked terrified, and I thought maybe someone really was after her. So I said sure. I paid, and we walked out. She stayed close behind me like I was her shield. I kept glancing around because her fear was starting to rub off on me. When someone is that scared, it has to be for a reason. We got to my car, and she rushed to the passenger side, opening the door before I even unlocked the rest of the doors. She ducked her head down like she was hiding from something. I asked again what was going on, and then she just said, "Please drive." I didn't want to make her panic more, so I started the car. As we pulled out of the lot, she kept shrinking down into the seat like she didn't want anyone to see her through the window. I felt like every second she didn't explain anything made it worse. Then suddenly, right as I turned onto the road, bright flashing lights exploded behind us. A ton of them. Blue and red everywhere. Sirens roaring. I thought some huge accident must have happened nearby. But then more police cars flew out from the opposite direction, blocking the road in front of us. I barely had time to react before one officer was yelling through a megaphone telling me to stop immediately and put the car in park. I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs. Rena grabbed my arm and whispered she was sorry. Sorry for what? Another cop shouted for me to put both hands out the window. I did it, confused and freaking out. Rena slowly lifted her hands too, shaking so hard I could hear her nails tapping the door. They approached with guns drawn. They dragged me out first and pushed me to the ground. They zip-tied my wrists, knee on my back, yelling at me not to move. I screamed that I didn't know what was happening, but they told me to shut up. I saw two officers pulling Rena out of the car. She didn't fight. She just stared at the ground with tears streaming down her face. But then I noticed her eyes kept darting around, not scared of the cops, but scared of someone else that wasn't visible. The officers started shouting questions at me, asking where I took her, what I did to her, how I convinced her to leave with me. They said she was a missing person. She'd escaped from her abductor hours earlier. I felt sick. Everything spun. I kept yelling that I was just her date, that we met online, that I didn't know anything about a kidnapping. But the more I explained, the more angry they got. They thought I was making it up. While they interrogated me on the asphalt, I heard a cop asking Rena if I was the guy who took her. She looked straight at him and said no, very loudly, very clearly, that I wasn't the one. She said I held her. But they didn't trust her either. They said victims lie sometimes from fear. Then one officer stepped aside to take a call. I heard him saying they confirmed the actual suspect fled an abandoned warehouse hours earlier. He was armed and dangerous. That's when something clicked. Her paranoia wasn't random. She wasn't just scared of crowds. She'd seen someone stalking her. She'd escaped and picked the first indoor public place she could find, the diner. And they thought I was him. They finally loosened the restraints a bit but didn't remove them. They kept me against a police van while they talked to Rena away from me. She kept pointing at different roads, her hands shaking like she was trying to explain where she'd been taken. The officers told me later that she'd been missing for 2 days. She escaped from a storage unit outside town. The description she gave of the guy didn't match me. Not even close. They eventually released me but told me not to go far just in case they needed more statements. My whole body was shaking as I sat back in my car, wrists burning from the zip ties. Before they drove her off for medical checks, Rena looked at me through the police car window. For the first time since we met, she didn't stare at a door or a shadow. She stared right at me and mouthed the words, "Thank you." I haven't talked to her since. I don't even know if she's okay now. I tried searching news articles, that everything just calls him a suspect still on the loose. And sometimes I wonder if he ever saw us leave that diner, if he thinks I helped her run. It terrifies me that he might know what I look like, what I drive, that he might think I'm the one who got in his way. I always said no to bowling dates because I'm terrible at anything that requires hand-eye coordination, but this guy made it sound fun. His name was Marcus. We matched on Hinge and he seemed normal enough. He didn't rush into anything weird in the chats. He liked movies, cooking, hiking, all that basic stuff people say to fill the profile. He asked if I wanted to go bowling because it would be something laid back and we could laugh together even if we both sucked. That actually sounded way better than an awkward dinner. The weird part started the second he showed up. He was wearing black gloves. Not winter gloves either, like tight, black leather ones. It wasn't cold or anything. He walked toward me with this stiff kind of energy like he was trying hard to look relaxed. He smiled and said hi, but kept his hands close to his pockets. I thought maybe he had some type of skin issue or cuts he didn't want to show. I didn't ask because I didn't want to sound rude. We went inside and the bowling alley was loud and full of kids and flashing lights. That kind of chaotic vibe that makes you feel safe because there are too many people around for anything creepy to go down. He paid for both of us before I could reach my card and told the guy behind the counter that he already knew his shoe size. He didn't even take his gloves off to grab the shoes or sign the receipt. I joked about him being scared of germs. He smiled, but didn't laugh. We picked a lane near the middle. Right away, he said he wouldn't be eating anything because he wasn't hungry. Not a big deal. I grabbed nachos for myself, and he just watched me eat like he was studying how humans use their fingers or something. I noticed he didn't take the gloves off to type on his phone either. He kind of tapped the screen in a weird, stiff way. When it was time to bowl, he walked up, still wearing those gloves. He picked up a ball like it was nothing. I was worried he'd drop it, but he launched it perfectly straight down the lane like he was a pro. It hit a strike. He didn't even celebrate or turn around. He just stood there watching the pins reset like he was waiting for something else to happen. Then he motioned for me to go. I did the most embarrassing roll in history, straight into the gutter. He smiled a little, then said no worries, but his voice sounded distracted. Every time a ball rolled back into the machine, he glanced around like he was expecting someone to be watching him. The gloves kept bothering me, and I finally asked if his hands were okay. He just said he had sensitive skin and needed to keep them on because of things like cleaning chemicals and stuff on the balls. It didn't sound convincing at all, but I didn't want to start an argument about gloves. He got another strike, then another. He said he didn't bowl often, but that was a lie. Nobody who bowls like that hardly bowls. While we played, some guy 2 lanes from us accidentally dropped his wallet and cards spilled out. Marcus instinctively bent down to help, but as soon as he touched one of the plastic cards, his glove slipped halfway off his right hand. He immediately jerked back hard like touching that card burned him. He clutched the glove tight, pulling it back on before I could even see his skin. The other guy thanked him, but Marcus just rushed away and stood by the machine breathing weird and fast. I tried to keep things cool and said he didn't have to panic over helping someone. He said it was fine, but his voice got shaky. He went back to bowling, but now his movements looked tense, almost robotic. When it was his turn again, he stepped forward, and that glove finally betrayed him. He picked up a new ball from the rack. As he swung his arm back, the glove slipped just enough for the scanner on top of the ball return machine to catch a glimpse of his fingertip. I didn't even know those things had scanners. I thought they were just lights to show the lane number. But the machine made this sharp beeping noise. Loud, way louder than anything else in the place. Red lights flashed on the screen above the lane saying some tech error message, but then those lights switched to something else. Something that didn't seem like a glitch. The manager looked up toward our lane with confusion. A few seconds later, I noticed 2 workers talking urgently while staring at a screen behind the counter. Marcus stared at me like I saw something I wasn't supposed to. His breathing got faster. His eyes scanned the crowd like he needed an escape route, but every path had people in it. Then his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, and his whole face dropped like everything was ruined. I asked if he was okay, and he didn't answer. He just whispered something under his breath and backed away from the lane. That's when officers walked in. Not like casual mall cops. Police with vests and radios, and that focused look like they already knew who they were coming for. They scanned the bowling alley, and one of them pointed right at Marcus. Everything happened in a rush. They shouted for him to stop moving and get his hands visible. He grabbed his wrist like he was trying to hold the glove on tighter, but slipped off completely. He stared at his own uncovered hand like it was his worst nightmare exposed. The officers reached him and forced him to the ground. Kids started screaming. A woman dropped her pizza. The music kept blasting like nothing was wrong while everyone else was freaking out. One of the officers grabbed his glove and bagged it like evidence. Another grabbed the scanner from his belt and held it against Marcus's fingers. It beeped instantly, and the officer looked at the little screen and said something into his radio. It sounded like he said confirmed. I stood frozen, holding a nacho like an idiot while they dragged him out. He didn't fight or yell. He just looked at me one last time with this glare that made me feel like I was the reason he got caught. The manager came over and asked me if I knew him well. I said it was our first date. Police took me aside to ask more questions. They told me he was wanted for questioning in a serious investigation, and that his fingerprints were in the national system connected to something they couldn't talk about. All I could think about was how close he was sitting to me, how he laughed once, how he touched the bowling balls right after I did, how easily he could grab my wrist like he did that wallet and not let go. When I got home, I deleted the app. Now, every time I see someone wearing gloves indoors, even just cheap ones, my brain jumps straight to Marcus. And I never want to see a bowling lane again. I think the first thing that made me say yes to meeting her was that she actually wanted a daytime date. Everyone online acts like they're too mysterious for daylight, but she said she liked morning vibes and strong coffee. Her name was Ellie. She had the short, messy haircut in her pics, and she talked like she didn't care what anyone thought. She suggested a cafe close to the town center. It sounded harmless. Public, busy, nothing weird. When I got there, she was already inside near the window, scrolling on her phone like she was trying to win a speed texting contest. She looked up and smiled, but then instantly took a quick picture out the window like she forgot I was the one she was meeting. I laughed and asked if she was doing photography for college or something. She said no, just a habit. It didn't sound like a good answer, but I ignored it. I just wanted the date to go normal. We ordered drinks and sat down. She never really gave me eye contact for more than 2 seconds. It was like her eyes were radar scanning the whole street. Every time a car parked, she leaned forward, snapped a picture of the plate, and typed something on her phone. Then she'd come back into the conversation like nothing happened. She asked me about hobbies and what music I liked, but right in the middle of me talking, she'd stop and say, "Hold on," and take another picture. Not just cars, though, sometimes random people walking past. I tried to joke that she was acting like a spy, and she just smiled at the window like that wasn't even close. At one point, she said she needed me to keep an eye on the door for a second. I asked why, and she said because she had to send something quickly and didn't want anyone sneaking up behind. I didn't want to look stupid, so I just glanced over every few seconds while she stared hard at her phone typing super fast. I didn't think twice about it. If anything, I thought she was just paranoid in a quirky way. She finished whatever she was doing and suddenly switched into being all sweet again, laughing, joking, asking questions like a normal date. But every time her phone buzzed, she'd glance at the message and her whole mood changed. I peeked once and saw a wallpaper of a skull with a smiley face carved into it. Strange choice, but I minded my business. Then she asked if I could take a picture of someone for her. Just a quick one. She pointed at this guy wearing a suit getting out of his car across the street. She slid me her phone and told me to zoom in on the plate after. I literally thought she was kidding. Who does that on a first date? I gave the phone back and said no thanks, already feeling like something was not right. She didn't get mad, though. She actually said that was smart, and that some people get caught over stuff like that. Caught over what? Before I could ask, she said she had to go pay for the drinks because she needed to step outside anyway. She got up and moved fast, phone in her hand, already snapping another photo of a different car before she even reached the door. I just sat there pretending like everything was fine while my stomach was mounting itself up. The weirdest moment was when she stopped by the trash bin outside and lifted her phone like she was secretly recording the entrance of the store across the street. Her face got this focused look like she was waiting for a target. I didn't want to bail right away in case I misunderstood everything. Maybe she was working with some parking violation app or something that pays you to report cars. I tried to convince myself of anything normal. She came back inside like nothing happened and started eating her muffin but barely tasted it. She kept glancing toward the windows. checking both directions like she had two separate missions running at once. Then she got one message that made her whole body stiffen. She stood up so fast the chair nearly fell. She told me she had to go because she was late for something important. She thanked me for the coffee without even looking me in the eyes and rushed out the door. I sat there confused, sipping the rest of my drink alone. 5 minutes later, I left and walked toward my car. That's when a police cruiser slowly rolled into the parking lot. I didn't think it was about me until another one pulled up behind me, blocking me in. 2 officers stepped out and asked if I could answer some questions. They told me they were investigating multiple reports of suspicious surveillance at public places. People taking pictures of random strangers in license plates and sending the details to unknown contacts. They said I was seen at the cafe with someone who was actively doing that, and that security footage made it look like I was keeping lookout while she did it. I swear my heart nearly exploded. I tried explaining it was a first date. I didn't even know what she was doing. I told them her name, showed them our Tinder messages, even described what she was wearing. They took notes, but I could tell they weren't convinced. One officer asked what exactly she was texting when she asked me to watch the door. I said I didn't know. They said it looked planned. They asked if I knew what organization she was involved with. Organization? I didn't even know where she lived. They let me go eventually, but told me not to leave town for a while in case they needed more info. I drove home trying to stop shaking. I checked Tinder to message her and explain what just happened. Her profile was gone, totally wiped. No conversation history. No pictures, like she was never there. Now I keep checking behind me in public. I keep scanning cars to see if any of them have someone inside taking pictures. I don't trust anyone with a phone near a window anymore. And the messed up part, my friends joke that I have the worst luck with dates, but none of them understand that I wasn't just unlucky that day. I was almost dragged into something criminal without even realizing it. People talk about red flags all the time, but no one ever mentions the kind that get the police asking if you're part of a surveillance ring. I never saw Ellie again. I hope I never do. But sometimes I wonder if she's out there right now in another cafe with another guy pretending to just like coffee. I always thought going to a guy's house on a first date was kind of risky, but I didn't want to seem boring. We matched on Tinder only 4 days before. His name was Adrian. He looked normal in his pictures, like the kind of guy who goes to weekend markets and has a golden retriever. He told me he cooked and that he made an insane chicken Alfredo. I joked that if he poisoned me, at least I'd die full. He replied with a laughing emoji and said he'd try not to kill me. That didn't feel weird at the time, but thinking about it now, that should have been a sign. His place was in a quiet neighborhood, the type where every house looks like they copied each other. He texted to park in the driveway because the street gets busy at night. I stepped out and he was already outside waiting, wearing a simple gray hoodie and jeans, smiling like he had everything under control. He gave me a little wave and opened the door for me like he was trying to be extra charming. The house smelled like something creamy and cheesy was cooking. Lights were dimmed to just enough to make it look cozy, though the vibe felt slightly too perfect, like he spent hours setting everything up. He walked me to the dining table and told me dinner was almost done, and said I could chill in the living room if I wanted. I didn't see any family pictures around, which I thought was strange, but maybe he just wasn't the sentimental type. I sat on the couch, and the TV was already on with the volume low. It was some live news segment, one of those boring ones about crime and missing people. I didn't pay attention because I didn't want to start thinking scary thoughts before eating. He came back holding 2 drinks, handed me mine, and sat close but not too close. He was polite, calm, almost too calm. He kept making little jokes, and I laughed because everything still felt normal. But every time I laughed, he stared at me a little longer than normal. It wasn't creepy exactly, more like he was memorizing my face or studying me. I blamed nerves. We ate dinner, and I'm not lying, it was good, like restaurant level good. He said he learned to cook from his older brother. He didn't talk much about his family, though. Every time I asked something deeper, he changed the subject back to me. Halfway through dessert, he asked if I wanted to watch something funny on TV. He grabbed the remote before I could answer and flipped through channels super fast, like he was trying to avoid something specific. But he accidentally went past that news channel again, and this time the screen froze on a live report. A white banner at the bottom said something about a man wanted for questioning in connection with a missing woman. Then they showed the police sketch. Everything inside me froze. The guy in the sketch looked just like Adrian. Same sharp jaw, same eyes, same haircut, same slightly uneven eyebrows. I tried not to stare too obviously, but I must have looked shocked because he suddenly muted the TV and said the media always exaggerates things and makes everyone look like a monster. I didn't even answer. My mind was racing. Was I sitting across from someone dangerous? I pretended to keep eating my dessert so he wouldn't think I noticed, but my hand was shaking so bad I almost dropped the spoon. I just needed to think straight and not freak out. The last thing I wanted was to make him suspicious of me. My brain was running through every possible excuse to leave without being obvious. Then he leaned forward slightly and asked if everything tasted okay. His tone was casual, but his eyes weren't. I said it was great and forced a smile so hard my jaw hurt. He smiled back, but it didn't feel real anymore. The house suddenly felt way too quiet. I noticed the doors didn't have normal locks. They had these bolt-style ones like you'd see in a workshop. Why would anyone need locks like that inside their house? Before I could stand up and say something like I needed fresh air, the silence was smashed apart by flashing blue and red lights bursting through the windows. Loud bangs hit the front door, and voices were shouting outside telling someone to come out. I pushed my chair back on reflex like I was going to run, but Adrian grabbed my wrist. Not super tight, but enough to make me freeze. He whispered that I shouldn't move and that everything would be fine. His voice wasn't shaking. He sounded like someone who already knew this was coming. The door blew open and officers rushed in, yelling for him to get on the floor. They aimed their guns right at him and at me too. I put my hands up instantly and kept saying I didn't know anything. Adrian stood up slowly like he practiced this and then suddenly bolted toward the kitchen. Officers tackled him hard. A chair snapped. Dishes shattered. He kept yelling something, but I couldn't understand a single word. 2 officers grabbed me and pulled me outside before I could even grab my jacket. My legs weren't steady and the cold air slapped me in the face. My heart was going way too fast. I saw neighbors watching from their windows, people recording on their phones. Someone covered me with a blanket even though I didn't ask for it. An officer said they'd explain everything soon and took my statement right there in the driveway. I told them about dinner, about the TV sketch, about how his eyes changed when he noticed me staring at the screen. They took notes and kept asking if he said anything weird earlier. I told them everything I could remember. They eventually brought him outside in handcuffs. His hoodie was messed up and his hair was all over the place. He looked way different from the calm guy who served me pasta. He spotted me from across the lawn and his face twisted into something angry or maybe desperate. He yelled that I ruined everything, that we could have made it work. I never understood what that meant. I never wanted to understand. They put him in the back of a police car and drove off like he was some criminal mastermind instead of a guy who looked completely normal on an app. They found things in his house later, but never told me details. They hinted someone else had been there earlier in the week. Someone who never left. I tried not to think about what that meant. I deleted Tinder the next morning without even thinking. I don't care if that makes me picky or boring or whatever. If a guy ever invites me over again, I'm running the opposite direction. The worst part, though, some nights I swear I catch glimpses of that sketch online again. Updated versions, sharper lines, more details, like they're still trying to find someone connected to him. I never watch the news anymore. I met her on Bumble a few weeks before it happened. Her name was Ivy, and she was one of those girls who looked way too perfect to actually reply, but somehow she did. She wasn't over the top or anything, just really chill. She said she loved quiet places and long drives, which sounded perfect to me because I hated loud bars and fake small talk. We planned to go for a drive one night after work, somewhere calm where we could just talk and get to know each other without a crowd. I told her about this scenic lookout spot just outside town where you could see the whole skyline. She said it sounded perfect. That night felt weird from the start. She texted saying she'd meet me instead of me picking her up because she had errands nearby. I didn't think much of it. She showed up in this big black hoodie, her hair tied up, no makeup, and she kept glancing around like she was late for something. I laughed it off and said she looked nervous, and she said it was just one of those days. She didn't seem like she wanted to talk about it. We stopped for snacks and she didn't get anything. Just stood beside me with her hands in her hoodie pocket, constantly checking her watch. It wasn't like she was bored. It looked more like she was waiting for something. I remember asking if she was okay, and she said yeah. She just had a time she had to be back. The weird part was, it was already 8 p.m., and she said she didn't work nights. We got to the lookout around 8:45. It was empty except for one parked car far off to the side. The air was cold, and the view looked unreal, all the city lights stretching out below like glitter. I was talking, trying to break the silence, but she barely looked at me. Just kept watching the time, flicking her wrist like she was timing something. I started to get uneasy. Then she said I should park a little further back because she didn't like being close to the edge. I reversed a few meters, thinking she was scared of heights. But as soon as I turned off the engine, she whispered something under her breath, too quiet for me to catch. Then she locked her phone screen and just stared out the window. About 2 minutes later, I saw movement in the side mirror. At first, I thought it was just shadows from the trees, but then 3 figures came out from behind the parked car. They were walking fast. Not running, but steady, and all of them were wearing black hoodies with masks. My stomach dropped. I thought maybe it was a prank, but Ivy didn't even react. She just stared straight ahead, breathing slowly like she'd been expecting this. Before I could ask what was going on, one of them slammed on the hood of my car and yelled through the glass. I couldn't understand everything, but I caught the words, "Give it back," and "You stole something." My hands froze on the steering wheel. Ivy didn't move an inch. I turned to her and said, "What is this?" And she just whispered, "Don't get out." Then they surrounded the car completely, tapping on the glass, circling us. One of them tried to open the passenger door, but it was locked. The tapping turned into banging. My heart was going insane. I told Ivy to explain what was happening, and she just said, "You shouldn't have come here." I honestly thought she was messing with me, like some kind of psycho prank for a TikTok or whatever. Then one of them pulled something metallic from his jacket. I couldn't tell if it was a crowbar or a gun, but that's when I floored it. I reversed down the dirt road, gravel flying everywhere, until I hit the main road again. I didn't look back until we were halfway down the hill. Ivy was shaking her head the whole time, mumbling that I had made it worse. I stopped near a gas station to catch my breath. I told her to explain, or I was calling the police myself. She started crying and said, "They think you took it." I told them it wasn't you. That's when I noticed her phone screen had a bunch of missed calls from someone saved as R. Then she said something that didn't make sense, that she didn't know how they found us this fast. Before I could say anything, flashing lights filled the mirrors. A police car pulled up behind us. I thought they came to help, but the second I got out, they were shouting for me to put my hands where they could see them. Another cruiser came from the opposite side. Ivy stepped out of the car, hands up, crying, saying he didn't do anything. But the officers weren't listening to her. They told me to get on the ground. I was completely lost. One of them said there'd been a report of a kidnapping, a woman forced into a vehicle matching mine. My heart stopped. I tried explaining that she came willingly, that it was a date, but the more I talked, the worse it sounded. Ivy wasn't helping. She just kept saying, "It's not him," over and over. One of the officers asked for ID and checked my car. Another came back holding Ivy's phone and said there were texts about the trade and keeping him there until they arrive. I swore it wasn't mine. I had no idea what they were talking about. They asked me what I did with the bag. I told them I didn't know anything about a bag. It made no sense. They separated us, made her sit in one car and me in another. She wouldn't even look at me anymore. She just kept whispering to one of the officers while I sat there shaking. The worst part was when they said the masked group claimed I took something from them earlier in the night, cash or something valuable. Apparently, my car was the same one they were tracking, but I'd been at work the whole day before the date. I was questioned for hours. They finally released me around 3 a.m. after confirming my work alibi. But by the time I was out, Ivy was gone. They said she'd been taken home after cooperating. Her number was disconnected by morning. Her Bumble profile was wiped clean too, like she never had existed. A week later, I got a message from an unknown number with a picture of my car parked at that same lookout. The message said, "We know we still have it." There was nothing in my car, nothing stolen, nothing missing. I don't even know what they think I took. I haven't gone on a date since. Every time I drive past that area, I feel like someone's watching from the trees. I don't even try to figure it out anymore. I just know Ivy wasn't random. She was part of something. And whatever it was, I was never supposed to leave that hill alive.